Laughter froze like glass at my mother's birthday dinner when she said, softly but sharp enough to cut, that I would never be as good as my sister. My chair scraped back. If Rachel is the one who truly takes care of this family, then let Rachel pay the bills. I'm done. I won't send another $1. A hush fell, napkins stilled midair. Rachel's smirk tilted toward a wince. Then Mom blinked, bewildered. What money? We never received anything from you. The room drew a single breath, and I knew the secret I had stuffed into silence for years was about to detonate. I grew up in a small Ohio town where the church bells measured Saturdays, and the grocery clerk knew who preferred paper to plastic. In that house, praise floated toward Rachel like dandelion seeds in summer. She was the honor student, the cheer captain. The girl neighbors congratulated before dessert. I learned to live in the quieter corners at the kitchen table with a library book, in the garage taking apart a second-hand computer my father bought at a yard sale. At 12, I carved a wooden jewelry box for Mom, painting tiny violets on the lid until my fingers cramped. She lifted it, smiled with the politeness of a stranger, and suggested I spend more time helping Rachel practice instead of wasting hours on projects. That night, I buried my tears in a pillow and made a private promise if I could not be seen. I would become strong. High school gave Rachel brighter lights. She belonged to everything that had a stage. I belonged to everything with a socket. At the spring talent show, her dance routine thundered through the auditorium while I waited backstage with a Palm Slick controller and a small robot that picked up a plastic cup on command. The machine performed flawlessly. The applause did not. I scanned the seats for our parents. They had left to drive Rachel to cheer practice so she wouldn't walk home after dark. I told myself I didn't mind. I coded longer that week than I slept. College was escape and proving ground. The University of Texas accepted me into computer engineering. Bills, rent, and textbooks tore through my savings. So I brewed lattes at the campus cafe and repaired laptops at the library until past 1:30 a.m., then stumbled into morning labs at 8:00 a.m. Exhaustion became a kind of prayer if I keep going. I will build a life where no one asks me to be someone else. Rachel bounced through ventures, a boutique, social media gigs, a seminar that smelled like a pyramid but posted glossy captions that promised a breakthrough at any minute. At home, my parents waited for it like weather. The call that changed everything came during my second year out of school. Dad's lungs. Mom said decades in the factory had caught up. Medicine, appointments. The leaky roof, they were drowning. I didn't hesitate. I can help, I said. She hated online banking. Rachel, still nearby, offered a solution with a breezy laugh. Send the money to me. I'll cash it and hand it over. Easy. Against the knot in my stomach, I trusted my sister. Each month I transferred $2,000, sometimes $2,500, and trimmed my life to fit the leftovers. I skipped dinners with coworkers, wore the same blazer until the elbows thinned, and learned the many ways rice and eggs could become a meal. Rachel's feed glowed, brunches on rooftops, a watch that winked from her wrist, a caption under a new SUV about how dreams only work if you do. I tried not to look, but sometimes the phone pulled me in like tide. When Mom complained about an electric bill or the price of Dad's inhaler, I sent more. When my boyfriend, Daniel, asked gently whether I was sure the money reached my parents, I bristled. Of course. She's my sister. The truth hovered like a shadow at the edge of the frame, and I told myself I was just tired. Graduation placed a diploma in my hands and a junior engineering badge on my desk in Austin. I liked the rhythm of solving problems all day, the quiet satisfaction of a clean build, the way the skyline caught fire at 6:45 in summer. I didn't like the ache of distance when Mom praised Rachel's sacrifices on speakerphone. Then, one evening, on a video call, Mom sighed about another month of shortfalls, and I blurted, "Didn't Rachel give you last week's transfer?" Confusion clouded her face. "Sweetheart, Rachel helps when she can, but not much." My mouth filled with sand. That month alone, I had wired 3,000. I smiled through the rest of the call, hung up, and sat in the dim kitchen until 11:10 p.m., while the refrigerator hummed like a judgment. I should have confronted Rachel immediately. Instead, I flew home 2 weeks later for Mom's 60th with a pale, blue-wrapped camera she'd once mentioned wanting for her garden. The house smelled of roast chicken and vanilla cake. Relatives arrived with laughter, and Rachel moved through them like she owned the light. At dinner, Aunt Linda toasted the daughter who sends money every month, and Uncle Frank added that not everyone is that devoted. The compliment landed like a shard of ice. Mom looked at me over her glass and asked why I couldn't be more like my sister. Something old and raw tore. My chair screeched back. "If Rachel takes care of you, let her keep doing it. I won't send another dollar." Silence crushed the room. Mom's fingers tightened around her glass. "What money? We never received anything from you." The air thinned. I pulled my phone from my pocket, opened the banking app, and scrolled through a constellation of transfers labeled for Mom and Dad. The screen glowed against my palm as I lifted it for all of them to see. The silence pressed down so heavily I could hear the faint hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Relatives leaned forward, eyes darting between my phone screen and Rachel's face. Her trademark smirk faltered, lips twitching as if words might save her. But nothing came. Uncle Frank's booming voice broke through first, sharp with disbelief. "Rachel, what is going on here?" Aunt Linda whispered, her teacup rattling against its saucer. My God. Rachel's cheeks flushed crimson, and she opened her mouth, but only fragments tumbled out. I didn't mean to. I was just borrowing some. I was going to pay it back." Borrowing. The word scraped across the room like a knife. My father's frail voice followed, quiet but cutting. "For years, what did you do with it?" His eyes, once proud whenever Rachel twirled across a stage, now glistened with betrayal. Rachel's gaze darted desperately around the table, searching for escape. "Finally," she stammered. "I needed it, for debts, for appearances. I gave you some, just enough so you'd believe, so you'd think I was the good daughter." Her voice cracked, and the truth clattered into the open like glass shattering on tile. Gasps rippled. My mother pressed trembling hands to her face. "Emily, I'm so sorry," she whispered through her fingers. "All those times I told you to be more like her, when it was you all along." Dad coughed, his voice unsteady. "I was blind. You carried us, and I never asked, never saw." For years, I had dreamed of hearing those words, of having my parents recognize me. But in that moment, they didn't feel like victory. They tasted like ashes, anger, grief, and exhaustion twisted together, and I stood taller than I ever had in that house. "I love you both," I said steadily. "That's why I sent the money. But things cannot go back to the way they were. If I continue helping, there have to be rules." Every eye in the room locked on me. Even Rachel lifted her gaze, guilt swimming in her expression. "First," I said, my voice firm, "no more comparisons. I'm not Rachel, and I never will be. I'm Emily. If you can't see me for who I am, I won't keep breaking myself to earn approval. Mom nodded quickly, tears streaking her cheeks. Never again. Sweetheart, never again. Second, everything must be transparent. I'll send money directly or pay bills myself. No more middlemen. No more secrets. Dad's voice rasped, but resolute. Agreed. We'll do whatever you say. No secrets. And third, Rachel must take responsibility. She can't keep pretending while I carry the weight. Rachel flinched. For once, she had no easy charm, no dazzling smile. Her voice cracked when she finally spoke. You're right. I've been selfish. I lied to you all. I don't expect forgiveness, but I'll change. I'll work. I'll contribute for real this time. The room sank into heavy silence. Relatives shifted uneasily. Aunt Linda murmured, I never knew. Emily. I judged you wrongly. Uncle Frank's booming voice softened. You carried more than any of us realized. Their words barely registered. All I felt was exhaustion. Daniel, steady as always, slid his hand into mine beneath the table. You did what needed to be done? He whispered. I met his eyes, the weight of years lifting just enough to let me breathe. He was right. Speaking up wasn't about humiliating Rachel or demanding apologies. It was about reclaiming my worth. Mom reached across the table, her grip trembling as she caught my hand. I don't deserve your forgiveness, she said, her voice raw. But I'll spend the rest of my life making this right. Dad's eyes glistened with regret. I should have seen you. I should have seen what you were doing all along. I swallowed hard. The child inside me longed to run into their arms, to finally feel seen. But the woman I had become knew this was the line in the sand. Words alone would not erase years of silence and shadows. Rachel's tears fell freely now. Her shoulders slumped. I'll prove it. She whispered. No more lies. Only actions. The birthday cake sat untouched in the center of the table, candles drooping into puddles of wax. The laughter that had once filled the living room had been replaced by reckoning. For the first time, Rachel had no stage. For the first time, I had one. Later that night, as the relatives whispered goodbyes and the house fell quiet, I caught my reflection in the old hallway mirror. My shoulders were straight, my eyes clear. For the first time in my life, I didn't see Rachel's shadow staring back. I saw myself Emily, no longer invisible. Back in Austin, the days felt strangely lighter, as if the invisible weight pressing down on me had finally lifted. Work was still demanding endless lines of code, late-night debugging sessions that stretched until 1 a.m. But now each challenge felt like mine to carry, not a burden dulled by constant comparison. For years, I had fought for scraps of acknowledgement. Now I realized I didn't need it to keep going, but slowly, almost cautiously, it began to arrive anyway. Mom started calling more often. Her voice was softer than I remembered, curious about my projects, my deadlines, even the coworkers I barely mentioned before. Being an engineer must be tough, she said one evening, her tone gentle. I sat at my kitchen table, blinking back tears at the simple validation. It was a phrase I had wanted to hear since I was a child, carving a jewelry box. Dad, too, began to change. Neighbors would send me messages saying he'd spoken of me proudly, the daughter in Texas building a career in technology. At first, he sounded awkward, unused to saying my name in that way, but over time, pride warmed his voice. Each word was like sunlight cracking through shutters I had lived behind too long. Rachel surprised me most. The sister who once measured her worth in followers and expensive dinners now clocked hours at a modest design firm. It wasn't glamorous, but it was honest. Each month, she sent a small amount home, not thousands, but real money she had worked for herself. When she called, the performative gloss was gone. "I'm trying, Em," she said simply. "I know I have a lot to make up for." Her voice carried a humility I had never heard before, and for the first time in years, I believed her. Life with Daniel grounded me through it all. He had been beside me at the table when the truth cracked open, and he remained steady after. One evening, we walked through a quiet park, streetlights casting long shadows across the path. He squeezed my hand, his voice firm yet tender. "You did the hardest thing anyone could do. You spoke the truth, even when it hurt. That takes courage, Emily." I leaned into him, feeling the cool night air and the warmth of his words. I just couldn't live in her shadow anymore. I admitted I had to step out. Yet healing wasn't immediate. Trust doesn't rebuild overnight, and memories of being overlooked for decades didn't fade because of a single confession. Some nights, lying in bed, I still heard the echoes of my mother's voice comparing me to Rachel, the whispers of teachers asking why I wasn't more like her, the hollow applause of audiences waiting for her while I performed in the margins. But now, instead of swallowing those memories whole, I spoke them out loud to Daniel, to myself, and sometimes even to Mom during our calls. To my surprise, she didn't deflect anymore. She listened. One Sunday afternoon, she admitted something that made my chest tighten. "I thought pushing you would make you stronger," she confessed. "I didn't see it was breaking you instead. I should have loved you for exactly who you were." For the first time, her words didn't feel like dismissal. They felt like truth. Slowly, the rhythm of my life reshaped itself. Work became not just a necessity, but a space where I thrived. I earned respect on my team, not for being louder, but for being steady, precise, reliable. The kind of engineer who caught details others overlooked. It was the same quiet diligence that had once made me invisible at home, now finally seen as strength. Rachel and I weren't suddenly close, but our conversations grew more honest. She didn't pretend anymore, and I didn't hide my exhaustion. Sometimes we laughed about childhood memories. Sometimes we sat in silence, acknowledging how much had been lost. She didn't braid my hair like when we were little, but she also didn't lie about who she was. That alone felt like progress. One evening, as I walked home past the glowing skyline of Austin, I thought back to the girl crying into her pillow at 12 years old, clutching a wooden jewelry box no one wanted. I wanted to reach through time and whisper one day, "You will carve a life for yourself out of circuits and courage, and no one will be able to take it from you." Family love cannot survive on favoritism and lies. It withers under comparison, but can heal through honesty and respect. I no longer needed to be Rachel's sister. I was Emily Carter, daughter, sister, woman, engineer, and finally, I was enough. If this story touched you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more stories like this. Leave a comment below about a time you had to step out of someone else's shadow. I'd love to hear your thoughts.